Hey, welcome. So, have you ever looked at a massive skyscraper or a huge, sprawling industrial plant and just wondered, how on earth did they build that without it all turning into complete chaos? Well, managing these giant, complex projects is honestly one of the biggest challenges out there.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to this one simple question. You can think of it as the billion-dollar question. Because if you get it right, you're a hero. But if you get it wrong, oh boy, the consequences can be absolutely massive. Today, we're going to unpack the blueprint that answers this very question. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with that big question, and then we're going to build our blueprint piece by piece. We'll lay down 3 foundational pillars: cost, schedule, and risk. Then we'll see how to lock them all together into one integrated plan. And finally, and this part is so important, we'll talk about how to learn from every single project, so the next one is even better. Okay, let's get into it. The answer to our big question, it isn't some kind of magic trick. It's a discipline. And the folks at AACE International, who are the real pros in this field, they've developed this incredibly comprehensive system. It's called the Total Cost Management Framework, or TCM for short. Now, according to ACE's official guidance, TCM is a systematic process. And that's the word to focus on here, process. This isn't just a random collection of tools or a simple checklist. No, it's a fully integrated approach that covers an asset's entire life, from the first spark of an idea all the way to the very end. So, our first pillar, this is all about the money. The big question is, how much is this thing actually going to cost? Getting a solid answer to that question is without a doubt the foundation of any successful project. I absolutely love this analogy because it's so true. Think about it. At the very beginning, when you're just kicking an idea around, your cost estimate is going to be pretty fuzzy, right? There's a huge range of uncertainty. But as you start to define the details, doing the engineering, getting quotes, that forecast gets sharper and sharper and a whole lot more reliable. And this is where AACE brings in a system to make sense of it all. Just look at the difference here. A Class 5 estimate, where you've barely defined anything, could be off by as much as 100%. That's huge! But as you move down the classes and get more defined, you get to a Class 1, which is incredibly precise. This system is fantastic because it gives everyone a clear language to talk about how confident we are in the numbers at every stage. So how do you actually get to those numbers? Well, you can't estimate a giant project all at once. You have to organize the work. And the tool for that is the Work Breakdown Structure, or WBS. It's how you take a massive, overwhelming project and chop it up into smaller, manageable, bite-sized pieces. This ensures every single thing is accounted for. It's your #1 weapon against scope creep. You know, when all that unexpected work just keeps piling up and totally wrecks your budget. All right, on to our next pillar. We know the how much, but that's kind of useless if we don't know the when. As they say, time is money. So mastering the project schedule is every bit as critical as mastering the cost. And just like the cost estimate, building a schedule isn't guesswork. It's a very logical process. It all starts with defining every single activity. Then you figure out the sequence. What has to happen before what? After you estimate how long each activity will take, you build the schedule model. But you don't stop there. The really critical steps are at the end. You have to constantly review, validate, and optimize that plan. Now, the engine driving that whole schedule model is something called the critical path method, or CPM. What it does is find the longest chain of connected tasks from start to finish. Any delay to any task on this path will directly delay the entire project's completion date. These are the activities that have zero wiggle room. They are the ones you have to watch like a hawk. And this right here, this highlights something that separates the pros from the amateurs. A great schedule isn't just a chart with a bunch of dates. It's a plan built on a foundation of assumptions. The schedule basis is the document that tells the story behind the schedule. It captures all the whys, the assumptions, the exclusions, the risks. It's an unbelievably powerful tool for managing expectations and navigating change down the road. Okay, so here's the thing. Even the world's best cost estimate and the most perfect schedule are designed for a perfect world. But, when is the world ever perfect, right? This next pillar is all about preparing for reality by tackling all those pesky what-ifs. And what's really important to get is that risk isn't just a 4-letter word. We always think of risk as a bad thing. And sure, there are threats, the things that can go wrong. But that's only half the story. There are also opportunities. These are the positive upside risks that, if you're ready for them, you can actually use to make the project even better than planned. So, how do you actually spot all these risks and opportunities? Well, you're not just gazing into a crystal ball. It's a structured process. You use proven techniques like brainstorming with your team, talking to experts, and, maybe most important of all, digging into the lessons learned from past projects so you don't make the same mistakes twice. Once you've identified the risks, you have to figure out how big they are. You can't just say, hey, bad weather might happen. You've got to put some numbers to it. And a common way to do that is to define a range. For any given task, what's the best case scenario if things go great? What's the worst case scenario? And what's the most likely outcome? And all of that risk analysis flows directly into a super important number, contingency. Now, this is not a slush fund. Let me repeat, not a slush fund. It's a calculated budget based on the specific risks you've identified that you set aside to cover their financial hit if they happen. For a budget level estimate, for example, 25% is a pretty common starting point. Okay, we've got our 3 massive pillars: cost, schedule, and risk. Now for the really cool part. How do we bring them all together into a single, powerful blueprint that we can actually execute? This is where the Project Controls Plan, or PCP, enters the picture. The best way to think about it is as the project's master playbook. It is the single source of truth that lays out exactly how everything is going to be managed, monitored, and controlled. It makes sure everyone on the team is playing by the same rules. And you can really see the power of the PCP right here. It's the central hub that connects our 3 big pillars: cost, schedule, and risk, with all the other vital project functions like managing changes, buying things, and communicating with everyone. It's literally the glue that holds the entire system together. So the project is finished, the ribbon has been cut. But wait, the job's not quite done. The final step, and you could argue it's the most important one for long-term success, is to make sure you create a legacy of knowledge for the future. This is what we call the continuous improvement cycle. As you're running the project, you have to capture what actually happened, the real costs, the real timelines. Then you process that data and feed it into a historical database. And why do you do all this? Simple. So that the next team starting the next project has a much, much more accurate and realistic foundation to build their estimates on. And the folks at ACE make this crystal clear. This isn't just a nice-to-do activity if you have time. Capturing this history is absolutely critical. It's the only way a company truly learns, truly improves, and turns the hard-won experience from one project into a powerful asset for every single project that comes after. So we're going to end right where we started, with a question for you to think about. When you look at your projects, is your plan a real blueprint built on the kind of discipline and integrated process we've been talking about? Or is it really just a wish list built more on hope? The total cost management framework proves that with the right system in place, success doesn't have to be left to chance.